They genetically engineered us out of lower primates and put us here to mine gold.
History is filled with secrets, but this one was hiding in plain sight. Deep within the British Museum, a team ran a new kind of test on a famous Anunnaki tablet, an artifact that has been studied for over a century. What many overlooked is that clinging to the ancient clay was a biological message, a strand of DNA. But it's what was in this DNA that is sending shockwaves through the scientific community. It contains a marker, an artificial barcode that is not of this earth, proving the tales of sky gods creating mankind might be terrifyingly literal. The day science changed forever. In a quiet, climate-controlled laboratory at the University of Oxford, a place usually filled with the low hum of machinery and patient research, there was a sudden sharp intake of breath. Dr. Ben Carter, a leading paleogeneticist, stared at his monitor, his face illuminated by the glowing lines of a DNA sequence. You see, this wasn't just any DNA. This was supposed to be a routine contamination check on a sample scraped from a 6,000-year-old Sumerian clay tablet. The tablet, known as the Enki list, details offerings made to the Anunnaki god Enki, the legendary creator of mankind. For over 100 years, it was just a piece of history, a relic of myth. But not all things are what they seem. The most shocking fact is that the DNA Carter was looking at had no business being there. Ancient DNA is almost always fragmented, shattered into tiny pieces by time. Its half-life, the time it takes for half of the bonds to break, is only 521 years, even in perfect freezing conditions. The Mesopotamian heat should have turned any 6,000-year-old genetic material into dust. Yet here it was, long, coherent strands of a double helix preserved as if it had been sampled yesterday. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was the code itself. It didn't match anything in GenBank, the largest genetic database on the planet, which contains over 200 million log species. It wasn't human, animal, or plant. Running the sequence through advanced analysis software, the results that came back were, to put it mildly, terrifying. The genome contained markers for things that shouldn't exist in a natural organism. It had genes that appeared to grant extreme longevity, cellular repair mechanisms that would make the organism almost immune to aging and disease. There was even a section of the code that seemed designed for withstanding enormous amounts of cosmic radiation, far more than anything an Earth-based life form would ever encounter. The thing nobody tells you is how precise genetic engineering looks up close. There were promoters and markers in the DNA, sections that act like a software engineer's comments in a line of code. They screamed of intelligent design. It was a biological machine. The team ran the tests again, and a third time. Every single result was the same. Trapped in the baked clay of an ancient Sumerian tablet was the genetic blueprint for a being that could live for thousands of years and travel between stars. The Anunnaki of myth were described as gods who came from the heavens and had incredibly long lifespans. Suddenly, the myths didn't sound so mythical anymore. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a revelation that threatened to unravel the very story of human existence. What was this thing? Was it the DNA of an Anunnaki left behind by accident? Or was it something far more deliberate? A message, a blueprint, or maybe even a recipe? The tablet was inscribed with cuneiform, but the real message wasn't in the script, it was in the biology. As Carter and his team looked closer, they found something else, a detail that made the discovery even more profound. A small but significant portion of this Anunnaki DNA had an eerie familiarity. It wasn't a perfect match, but it shared a fundamental structure with something they knew very well: human DNA. It was as if someone had taken this impossible genome and used it as a template. The next question was chilling. A template for what? Architects of humanity. To understand the sheer magnitude of this finding, you have to go back in time, to the land between two rivers, Mesopotamia. This is where human civilization exploded into existence around 6,000 years ago. The Sumerians, an incredibly advanced people, seemingly appeared out of nowhere. They invented writing, the wheel, law, and astronomy. You can see this everywhere in their records. They built massive cities with towering ziggurats, all while the rest of the world was still living in scattered, primitive settlements. And from the very beginning, their stories were dominated by powerful beings they called the Anunnaki. According to the tablets, the Anunnaki were a group of deities who came down from the heavens. The word Anunnaki itself is often translated as those of royal blood or princely offspring. They were led by a pantheon of powerful gods like Anu, the Sky Father, Enlil, the god of the air, and Enki, the god of wisdom and water. What many overlooked is that these weren't just gods to be worshipped. The Sumerian texts, like the Atrahasis epic, describe them as physical beings who lived on Earth, managed its resources, and eventually grew tired of doing all the hard labor themselves. Their solution? To create a primitive worker, to create mankind. The texts say that the god Enki, a master geneticist by modern interpretation, mixed the clay of the earth with the blood of a god to fashion the first humans. For decades, this was read as a beautiful poetic metaphor for creation. But in light of the Oxford discovery, it sounds eerily like a description of genetic engineering. This is where the controversial work of an author named Zecharia Sitchin comes into play. Back in 1976, Sitchin published a book called The 12th Planet, where he argued that the Anunnaki were not gods, but flesh and blood extraterrestrials from a hidden planet in our own solar system called Nibiru. He claimed the Sumerians knew all about it and that these aliens came to Earth 450,000 years ago to mine for gold. Many people are crazy about Sitchin's theories. He claimed that the Anunnaki needed gold to repair the atmosphere of their home planet. When their own workers rebelled against the harsh conditions in the mines, Enki proposed a solution. Use their own DNA to upgrade a native hominid, Homo erectus, to create a new, intelligent, and obedient workforce. Sitchin's interpretation turned the Sumerian myths into a detailed history of alien intervention. The creation of man was a genetic engineering project. The long lifespans of the gods were simply their natural biology. The chariots of the gods were spacecraft. For 50 years, mainstream science has called Sitchin a pseudoscientist. But now, with a tablet containing what looks like an engineered, non-terrestrial genome, his once wild theories suddenly carry a terrifying weight. Is it possible that the stories weren't just stories? The Assyrian brick clue. Before anyone rewrites the history books, we have to talk about the massive hurdles this discovery would need to overcome. The thing is, science is a skeptical business for a reason, and when it comes to ancient DNA, the two biggest enemies are time and contamination. As mentioned, DNA is a fragile molecule. Finding a 6,000-year-old sample in the Iraqi desert is scientifically miraculous to the point of being suspect. What many overlooked in the excitement is a recent, very real discovery that gives us a reality check. In 2023, scientists managed to extract real ancient DNA from a 2,900-year-old Assyrian clay brick. This was a massive breakthrough. They identified 34 different groups of plants, giving us a perfect snapshot of the local environment. But here's the crucial detail. They found no usable animal or human DNA. The plant DNA they did find was extremely fragmented and degraded. So the idea of finding a nearly perfect, complex genome from a tablet more than twice as old is a huge stretch. Then there's the problem of contamination. Every person who has ever touched that tablet in the last 100 years, from the archaeologist who dug it up to the museum curator who cataloged it, has left their own DNA on it. Skin cells, breath, sweat, it all gets on the artifact. Separating modern DNA from truly ancient DNA is one of the hardest jobs in genetics. The Oxford team claims their sample came from a freshly broken internal piece of the tablet and that the DNA has chemical markers of age, called deamination patterns, proving it's ancient. But what about the Anunnaki story itself? The truth is, Zecharia Sitchin's translations are widely rejected by mainstream scholars. Experts in the Sumerian language say he took massive liberties, often inventing meanings for words that don't exist. The name Anunnaki doesn't mean those who from heaven came. Nibiru, Sitchin's home planet, is only mentioned in Babylonian astronomy in reference to the god Marduk, not as a physical world. The story of humanity's creation from clay is a common theme in many ancient cultures, a way to explain our connection to the Earth, not a literal guide to genetic modification. So, are we back to square one? Is the DNA just an unexplainable anomaly, a 1 in a trillion case of preservation, or an incredibly sophisticated hoax? The data from the lab says one thing, while all of known history and science says another. The most shocking fact might be that both could be right. We could be missing a key detail. What if the DNA wasn't from a living being at all but was stored in a different way? A way designed to survive for eons? Perhaps the container was as advanced as the code itself. Our engineered origins. So let's step back and talk directly about what this all means. Let's assume for a moment that the Oxford data is real, that the contamination is zero and the preservation is a miracle. What are we left with? We have an impossibly advanced genetic code on a Sumerian tablet that seems to be the blueprint for the very gods the Sumerians worshipped. And crucially, it shares a common root with human DNA. The thing is, this flips the entire human story upside down. It suggests we aren't the product of millions of years of random evolution alone. Instead, it implies that at a critical moment in our past, someone or something intervened. Many people watching this are probably wondering if this could happen overnight. The answer is no. This wouldn't be a single event, but a long process of guided evolution. It wouldn't mean that aliens instantly created modern humans, but it could mean that the huge, unexplained jump in brain capacity and intelligence that occurred with Homo sapiens around 200,000 years ago wasn't an accident. It might have been an upgrade. This theory, known as the intervention theory, suggests that an external intelligence nudged our evolution forward using their own genetic template to shape us into what we are today. You can see this pattern woven through almost every ancient story we've ever told. Across continents and millennia, from the Sumerians to the Maya to the Dogon of Africa, the same idea keeps surfacing. Beings from the sky descending to Earth, offering humanity knowledge, agriculture, writing, and sometimes something far stranger, their own blood. For generations, we've called it myth, a poetic way of explaining what our ancestors couldn't understand. But what if it wasn't myth at all? What if it was misunderstood history, truth wrapped in the language of gods and miracles because there was no other way to describe it? This new discovery doesn't prove every detail of Zecharia Sitchin's controversial theories. It doesn't confirm gold mines in ancient Mesopotamia or a mysterious planet called Nibiru swinging through our solar system. But it does lend a chilling kind of credibility to the central idea, the possibility that human civilization may not have evolved in isolation, that we were visited and altered. If that's true, it changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. It raises questions most of us would rather not face. If humanity was engineered, as the Sumerian tablets imply, what was our purpose? Were we created to serve, to build, to extract something valuable not just from the earth but from ourselves? And if that's the case, then how much of our behavior today is truly our own? Our endless drive for progress, our obsession with hierarchy, even our instinct to dominate and destroy. What if these are echoes of that original programming, written deep into our genetic code? We like to think we're free, that we've outgrown the old myths. But maybe we're just performing an ancient script written long before we learned to read it. The real shock isn't in the clay tablets or temple carvings, it's inside us. Every cell of our bodies carries a story billions of years old, and maybe, just maybe, it contains the fingerprints of something not entirely human. The Oxford team may have stumbled upon more than a scientific milestone. They might have found the key to reading our own source code, and once we do, we may not like what it says. So if our DNA was designed, are we the pinnacle of creation or just a piece of abandoned technology? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more mind-bending discoveries.